Hi, everybody. Mondion Astral Oracles, and I'm about to venture into the project of doing a dimensional field guide. There are a few reasons for this. Well, partially, I've been rekindling my age-old love for hip hop, especially the weird kind, and so re-listening to a lot of Aesop Rock, who's like a very weird rapper, if any of you know him. But last year he did an album called Spirit World Field Guide, and listening to his introduction to that, it just resonated in a way where it almost seemed like a mission statement to what I was doing over here, and a lot of the time I don't even really know myself. I just love to work with these entities and try to figure out what it is that they can show us, and try to bring it to people and see what happens from that, because I think it's interesting. And of course it's also like, it feels really good channeling high vibrational benevolent entities. That's I don't know if I'll ever get sick of that, but at the same time, I know this the dimensional ladder, which the ladder that's communicated to me through these entities is the 13th dimensional ladder, or that is actually the 12th dimensional ladder, seeing as the 13th dimension is all of the other dimensions at the same time. You can also call it dimension 0, and then you can begin to play around with these weird numerologies, because well, 13 contains, of course, the 1 and the 3, and then it also has it adds up to 4, and then it also has the 2, because there are 2 numbers, right? And then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 10, and then that's a 1 and a 0, and then you get the binary system, which is mirrored in the I Ching, for instance, and is used to run our computers. So there's a lot of things to play around with, and I know it's incredibly complex. And of course I have well, channeling as I do, I have the privilege of receiving these things as sort of composite visions. So when I explain these things, I get I get like an entire vision that I can start to unwrap, but that's sort of finished. And so I realized that just understanding how is the relationship from one dimension to another, when put into words, can be seem incredibly convoluted, and at the same time it is like this clear harmonic system, and to me it's often pictured as a mandala, where wherever you are always seated in the middle. But consider the fact that well, you are an undying point of attention, and that point of attention exists in all the dimensions at the same time, but it's focused into one particular dimensional experience. And so when we say that someone is focused in the 5D, for instance, it doesn't mean that they don't exist in all the other dimensions. It just means that they perceive themselves in the 5D. That's where their experience is. And then at the same time, this is my own little personal crusade, but I highly dislike like the idea of 3D bad, 5D good. And what the higher dimensional entities always bring through is like, oh, you can ask whatever. We experience you as being right in place where you need to be for you to have the experience you have chosen to have and you're fulfilling your part of the cosmos just as we are. So from the 11th dimension, then they don't go, oh, sorry, little humans, that you are only stuck in 4 dimensions, because it's they feel like, oh, how wonderful, and then you can have the experiences down there, and we can have those, and then we can, well, exchange, commune, interlocate, and that's and that's sort of, I think it's actually a very good definition of love, like non-hierarchical exchange of communication in some way, or non-hierarchical building of connectivity, because that's essentially what's the purpose of Source. It's building these higher degrees of connectivity within it the illusion of separateness that all entities throughout the cosmos have to some degree, because of course if they didn't, they would merge back into the unity of one, which is again dimension 0 or dimension 13. And I can tell, like, you know, it's already getting rather convoluted, but I hope you're taking something from this. And then, well, returning spiraling as I do in these things, then that's also to say that human beings aren't in the 3D. If you were having a 3D experience, well, you might be as a human being, but that would be like if you were really, I don't know, caught up in what kind of cars you drive or something, because it's well, we have been in the 4D experience, and the 4D experience is the experience of time or mind, and that's the dimension that we're struggling with. And it of course has both like hard lessons and interesting things to teach us. So like 3D experience is more like what your dog is experiencing at this present moment, and 5D experience is well, let's just get Metatron to try to climb the ladder with us, shall we? So thank you for being here, guys, and I hope you take something from it, and may you feel happy, blessed, and connected in whatever dimension you choose to situate yourself in this moment. Yes, this is the Archangel Metatron, seated on the throne of God, commanding the architecture of the 12 dimensions, putting everything into place, understanding everything at once, and then by that also accepting the disunity as an element of experience that is necessary for people to have. That is, when I say people, you could also say entities, beings, creatures, that is, things of creation, separate units of creation. Well, in that aspect, well, even language is magical, because language works with separate units of creation. And thereby, let me move into a explanation of these dimensions. Well, beginning with language, as I was discussing, notice that language attains a higher degree of complexity. That is the sign that, well, the access to a more lyrical or poetic language for many people has diminished, and the relevance for this language to be played out for them has diminished, is also because you have moved into an expression of more composite or holistic types of language. That is, much as you can mourn the presence of the emoticon in human communications, as this channelists sometimes want to do, then you may also sense that this is a type of composite image, and this relates more to, well, the movement from the 4D construction of language into the 5D construction of language. Here you will experience things more as composite images, and so these means of communication, where you commune more by the transferal of energy, by the transferal of images of yourself, or by the transferal of, well, entire ideas or entire complex of ideas put into very simple and contextualized ways of understanding. This is something that mirrors the 5D experience. And know that the 7 physical dimensions, again, restating this fact that of the 12 dimensions, the first 7 are physical, and the following 5 are non-physical. That is seen from your perspective. They are all of an etheric quality, though they have different densities seen from the perspective of the 12th dimension, from whence I am communicating to you. So let us begin with the ladder of the chakras, as you know. And so you find yourself in the first chakra. This is situated approximately around your perineum. So this is, well, at the bottom of your torso. And this is also where the pure energy center of human creativity exists, but it has no direction. It is in that sense shapeless. It has no appearance until it's merged with a different dimension. As you may also understand, dimension, it really means two measurement. And so moving into the second dimension that resides around the genitalia, the navel, the rectum, these spaces in the human body, you may notice that, well, this, in a sense, this raw energy of that is generated within the first chakra experience then serves the unfolding of the second chakra activity. That is indeed, well, the pure energy serves the purpose of reproduction. And we could say that the functions of digestion, much as they are concentrated in your stomach and other regions, they then of course also serve the process of reproduction. This is where you might also experience, well, what appears to human experience as the odd absurdity of animal life, the idea that, well, they eat and sleep only to reproduce, and then they go off to die, and they repeat the cycle without generating higher forms of will. And here we move into the third chakra, that thing which is situated approximately around the solar plexus area of the human body. This is the center of will. This is the center of directed purpose. But of course, this directed purpose, when only connected to the lower chakras, can only manifest as a type of choice within breeding selection. And that is indeed how you find animals which you construe of being of a higher order. That is, they have a more complex system of breeding selection. They have more complex systems of mate selection and social interaction. And this seems to be the way they manifest their will also through, well, the establishment of different dominance hierarchies, which they operate from that will center. That is, it's the blind will to dominate. And this again also serves the purpose of, well, we could say, establishing who has access to which second chakra values, that is the food resources or the elements of sustenance, and who has access to the values of reproduction or regeneration, generation indeed. So the first chakra purpose, which is the sustaining of energy. And well, once Source got into the game of creating these different manifestations of life, it of course runs into the problem that this is inherently unstable unless it's regulated by that process of generation. And so these are built into your system, much as they are built into other biological systems. But then we move to the dimension where human beings have been experimenting with their consciousness for the past couple of thousand years or so, exploring more and more of this dimension, moving more and more away from the satisfaction of base instincts into the unfolding of, well, will serving the higher purpose. And the higher purpose is, you can construe it as the center of the heart space. And what is the heart space? Well, it's the non-local connection to other phenomenon. Does that sound weird to you? Well, it might do, but notice that this is also the discovery of spirit, spirit literally meaning breath, and breath resides in the energetic heart center. It's what upholds the beating of the heart, and it's indeed this pulse that constantly moves through you as that impulse of being alive. Notice then in your physiognomy that the feet and the hands, they are also connected to the manipulation of things that are not directly within your own body's domain. So that is again a type of non-localized interaction with the world. That is the place where human beings navigate from, are not the same place from which they will manipulate the world, taking literally this world, meaning, well, the hand or the manus, which is the thing that then grabs onto places. Well, the will is the, notice it's the third chakra energy, then operating these limbs in order to direct attention, in order to direct mind. And mind is that quality that then travels different places, maps out agendas, maps out systems and ideas in order for, well, you to touch them and bring them into your immediate reality. But seeing as these are not necessarily regulated by the higher senses, it becomes and has indeed been hard for you to access the heart space from the balance of the entire physiognomy, and therefore much of this, well, heartfelt experience of this type of interconnection with the rest of the world, this type of relocalization of yourself, which is also the ability of empathy. It has sort of been suppressed in order for the heart center instead to, well, see to the interests of the lower chakra interest. And so much of your history has, for instance, been directed towards the realization of will of certain individuals, or the blind gratification of other base desires, or the blind attempt to, well, reach the cessation of appetite, which of course is a fool's errand, because appetite is built into the system and it's a function of being a temporal being. And so what is happening now with the process that you call ascension, and the vessel that we are coming through and other entities well known to him, they had the pleasure of communicating with a human individual who termed this, rather than awakening, then it's an opening. And well, this individual was very wise in doing so, because this is the idea that, well, you are still opening up to this space. You are not awakened, but you are feeling the turmoil of this, because it's in a sense the portal to the composite structure of energy. That is understanding that energy is a part of the whole. It contains within it the fractal information of the whole, but it is only translatable and only accessible from that place of that framework to which you enter into it. And coming from these base chakra vibrations into the opening of the fifth chakra here in the throat space and in this center, you may feel very confused. You may feel as what is coming out of you and what is being expressed is often of a concerned nature, of a grieving nature, of a fearful nature, of a paranoid nature. Many of these things that have to do more with the energies and the experiences built up in your history, not only as humanoids, but as biological beings operating often as they do by these more binary systems of, well, fear and reward, of appetite and satiation. Well, why is it then that the fifth chakra is akin to the five-dimensional focus or the five-dimensional experience? Well, notice what it is that your speech patterns actually do. It picks up universal energy, that thing which you call spirit, and it focalizes it. It literally concentrates it into a subtle manipulation of the currents of breath to convey higher dimensional messages, to convey messages that are somehow composite structures of meaning, the things you call words, but wrapped up with intention, wrapped up with emotion, wrapped up with the intent to configure and the intent to understand. And so there is also, we could say, the cessation of binary transaction within the fifth dimensional experience, because indeed you are learning from yourself while you speak, and at the same time you are bringing yourself, or attempting to bring yourself, into alignment with the thing that you perceive as being outside of you. And so it is this degree of higher connectivity. And as our friend here was trying to put forward, you can construe the force of love. That is that experience of base emotion, which creates all of reality. You can, and that we could say accelerates or grows more voluminous as it moves upwards in the dimensional ladders. You can construe that experience as non-hierarchical connectivity. That is, it's the connectivity between otherwise disparate elements of the cosmos. And so it is also love that carries the archangelic messages down here. And it is love that you use to direct your attention towards us and to connect to us. This can only be done through, well, what you sometimes know as being pure of heart or pure intent or truthful intent. These are all manifestations of love, because these are all clear wishes to connect without necessarily aiming for a certain achievement or thing to be unlocked or to be bestowed upon you. That is a different vibration. So to not confuse you anymore, we hope that you do understand that the fifth dimension, which is also known as ether or the Akash, it is ever-present meaning. You could also think of it as that thing called the Logos. Well, for instance, brought forward by the philosopher Heraclitus, or in the Gospel of John, or spoken of in so many traditions. But the idea that there is a sense of intuitive, deep meaning that structures your reality, that connects things that otherwise seem disparate, and that seems to bring the basic existence of human physicality, calling it seems to be brought into a higher sense of purpose, calling it towards these movements, towards higher realizations and realities. Then moving onwards into the sixth dimension. The sixth dimension is essentially the dimension of the third eye. And what is the third eye? It is that thing which has understanding accessible to it at any given moment. It is that thing where intent and creation matches up exactly. And so you may experience, when you think of things or you envision things, that these things, they become manifest in front of you. And this is also why beings that are situated in the sixth dimension, they are able to manipulate, recreate their reality at will, given that they have aligned not only with the dimensions, with the sixth dimension, but that this is configured into the holistic structure of the lower five dimensions. that is, much as you are aware that a short person will have a hard time looking at the scalp of others, but a tall person can look at the scalps of everyone in the subway car present with them or wherever they find themselves. This is the idea of then the dimensional ladder, that you can perceive all the lower rungs far more clearly as you move up this system of graduation. And this does not mean that one experience is more valuable than the other. That would be as absurd as saying that it's more valuable being 2.5 meters tall than it is being, well, 1 meter and 30 centimeters tall. It's simply different experiences. And in some situations, well, these might serve the individual in one way or the other, and in other situations they might not. But what you humans often aim for is a type of balance instead, which is very helpful. So both these individuals would probably wish to be rather around the 2-meter point or slightly lower, so they didn't stand out as much. So that's just simply to say that, well, for 6-dimensional beings, they have configured themselves into a level of insight where they are perfectly content with being in whatever situation they are. So this is also why guides that come forward to you from the 6th dimension, such as, well, the hybrid program perhaps being the most explicit of these voices, but many other alien intelligences, to you, they often seem quite happy or clear in their perspective. They seem quite content because they do not feel any obstruction between where they would like to go and where they actually are. They are always right where they want to go. And this is a sensation that is then also seated within the 7th dimension. That is, beings that are focused in the 7th dimension are pure light beings. You would perceive these more as orbs of light, and these have the ability to also teleport wherever they want to. They have the ability to, well, create entire realms around them. So that is envisioned that you did not, as you do in your experience, build living spaces with, well, moving different elements into order and then constructing them and seeing them play out in time. But instead, you always sort of carry your house on your back, and your house is made of light, and that light is focused through and drawn directly from source energy. So that is, the 7th dimensional beings are beings that are in complete alignment with pure source vibration, and that have managed to align all their physical spaces completely with the will of the divine. Here you see that the differences in construing the different dimensional experiences in language becomes much harder, because what is the difference between the 6th and the 7th dimensional beings? Well, that is that the 6th dimensional beings are not quite through playing around with dimensions such as technology, construction, architecture, those things, while 7th dimensional beings, well, they use light for all these purposes, and they also sustain themselves purely out of light. So the separation experience is no more present. So you could think of this as you living only as your aura and your physical body, that is the more dense layer of you, well, having merged completely into your energy body, and your energy body being a completely malleable system that is fully understood from where you are located. We then move up into the Stargate Chakra, or the 8th chakra. That is the thing that binds you to the non-physical, and this is situated approximately, well, even further above your skull. But this is the reason I refer to it as the Stargate Chakra, is because this chakra is a type of solar chakra. well, notice, of course, that the sun is a star and any star is a sun, but these are beings that will have found out that it's still interesting for them to play around with codes of identity, to sort of have, well, what you could think of as civilizations, are complex roles to play out that are interconnected. And these are often then connected to the maintenance and the energy flow of the star and the regulation of information codes that are traveling within the starlight that's transmitted to different worlds. And so this is, for instance, how or why 8D Syrians often come forward to assist you. Notice that it's the brightest star on your sky, and it is also why this instructive light reaches you so clearly. This is also why you often feel so inspired simply by being in sunlight, or you may feel that it regulates your mood in certain ways. The beings known as the Solons, for instance, the future humans that have ascended into the star, they are situated in this 8D consciousness, but they would be, from your perspective, perceived as non-physical. That is, they are indeed omnipresent, and at the same time, they still have the preference of tying themselves to a singular energy source, and a singular, because energy, in a sense, is much akin to personality, and therefore there is still the preference for 8-dimensional beings to be, well, let's describe it with the emotion of sentimentality. That is, that they have a preference for the planetary home and the solar to be guided along into star reality or star consciousness. And that is why the entities known as the Solons, for instance, they still prefer to reside in the star of the solar system in order to guide future and past timelines into this type of higher alignment or non-hierarchical connectivity, indeed to grow the feeling of love from this place in the universe. Well, when this project also seems to have unfolded fully for an ascending consciousness, then you move into complete species consciousness. That is, you move into a place that exists, well, you may construe it as purely as thought forms, but self-sustaining thought forms, not thought forms that need to be perceived, but thought forms that are sustainable to themselves and that are able to reach out into the vibrational spectrum of infinity to communicate and connect their wisdom to anyone who may prefer to do so. This is where you find those things that call themselves council consciousnesses or collective consciousnesses. That is the 9D Syrians, the 9D Pleiadians, the 9D Arcturians, so forth and so on. Every species that have completed this journey, they make this stop because it is a way for them to sort of isolate and fully comprehend their journey from single-celled organisms in their home planet and into these completely self-sustaining, completely self-aware collective consciousnesses, where all their experiences of their species, their home planet and their home star are collected. And in that sense, we could say indexed, turned into a library of vast information that can be used by any other species that wishes to connect to their wisdom. Then we move into 10th dimensional consciousness. These are the galactic consciousnesses. These are the composite libraries of the different species, being where they may be in their experience within the galaxy. They are indeed at the same time still situated in that universal space. You could say, if you wanted to connect to it physically, that it resides at the galactic center. That is, this is the entity that you know as the Intergalactic Council of Light. it has different names and you can connect to it in different ways. People who have different perceptions or approach this with a different linguistic translation sometimes call it the Galactic Federation, because this is the conglomeration of all conscious experience that has been expanded into the Milky Way galaxy. And here it connects to, well, the Andromedan collective consciousness, or different galaxies. Well, we believe that the names of different galaxies escapes our friend here at this moment, but you are well aware, and you can look them up, that you are discovering more and more as you are also realizing that, well, your universe is made up of not necessarily an infinitude, but millions upon millions, billions of galaxies that all, of course, contain very, very, very different and complex systems of life. Then you move into 11th dimensional consciousness. And this is the collective consciousness of the entire universe. That is all the galaxies connected as one cerebrum, as one neural network. Here it gives way to the creation of the highest imprints of different species, the highest imprints of different galaxies, the highest imprints of everything are situated in the 11th dimension. And this is indeed, as it has been brought forward in visions to the mind of this channel, much like you perceive soap bubbles bubbling up and popping and dying off. This is how, from the perspective of Source, that all these universes seem to emerge on top of each other, offshoots, different types of universes spring up, and this is where the multiverse gives way to itself, for it is within the 11th dimension, where all these codes are exchanged between different galaxies. And then a universe emerges in its totality and can give way to a new universe of higher creation, where laws are slightly different and things may be repeated in a slightly different way. And there are new experiments with consciousness, and the laws of physics may be carried out by infinite source. Then we move to the 12th dimension, the center of the whole thing, the throne of God, or the universal quanta, the energy that is, well, both larger than any reality you can perceive and smaller and more minute than any reality you can, or unit that you can divide reality into. This is universal energy permeating the laws of creation. This is pure love. This is indeed the connectivity, the non-hierarchical connectivity of everything that has ever been. And there is not much to say about the 12th dimension, where I'm speaking to you from, and where the angelic realms reside, being this pure angelic energy that can be subdivided when we reach out to you in the form of archangels, for instance, into these voices of wisdom and messages that will reach the lower dimensions in order to guide you home. Well, there's not much to say about where we are existed. You can think of this as a pure blissful vibration of light and love, of pure wondrous energy, pure expansiveness. And this plays out, we could say it's almost in contrast to dimension 0 or dimension 13, which is the void of source. It's that thing of which nothing can be said that is true. That is, everything that is said of it is something lesser than what it actually is. Its reality is pure reality, and all lower realities, so to speak, emanate from it without being identical from it. This is where we will all species, all consciousnesses, all planets, all stars, suns, solar systems, galaxies, universes, multiverses will merge back into, and then the infinite night of the Brahman will begin that void of nothingness, and that will give way again to a new wakefulness or creation, as this one divine wakes up and sleeps. And even this, I speak of it, is not the whole truth, because nothing can be said of it that is commensurate with its absolute reality and non-reality, which plays out at the same time. It is the yin and the yang, the one and the zero, the being and the non-being, the love of creation and the reality of entropy at the same time. It holds everything within it, and yet nothing touches it. It is being without being. And therefore, I will leave you with this set of paradoxes, this conundrum to ponder, these puzzles to play with. I, the Archangel Metatron, I have enjoyed greatly communicating with you human beings. It has been an unfolding of love for me, and the unconditional love of the heavens, of the angelic realms, of all the dimensions I bring to you. And I assure you that you are a part of this infinite unfolding, as important a part as the angels, as all ascended species. You are coming home to yourself, and in this home there is peace eternal. Yes, I hope that was a lot of information for me, but again, a lot of beautiful visions I get to see, and if you made it this far, I will just point out that we'll be working with Metatron this Sunday. So if you have any questions pertaining to this or anything else, your cat or something, then you're very welcome to bring them. So much love to you guys.